There's a question I've carried with me for a long time now. How do we teach someone to see, not with their eyes? That's the easy part. We open them and the world floods in, whether we want it to or not. But to truly see another person, to look past the surface and recognize the humanity underneath, that's something else entirely. That's something that has to be learned. Some people never learn it. They go through their whole lives looking at the world like it's a mirror, seeing only themselves reflected back. But others, the lucky ones, have someone who shows them how to look differently, who takes them by the hand and says, "Here, let me show you what you've been missing." This is a story about that kind of seeing, about a boy who had everything except the one thing that mattered, and about a father who loved him enough to teach him the hardest lesson of all. Come sit with me. The fire's warm, and I think this is a story worth telling. I first met Elena Vasquez in September of my junior year. She was new to Ashford Academy, which was unusual in itself. People didn't transfer to Ashford. They were born into it, in a way. Their parents had gone there, and their grandparents before them. The names on the buildings matched the names on the class rosters. It was that kind of place. But Elena was different. She had come on a full scholarship, one of those programs the school had started to diversify its student body, a gesture toward the world outside our gates, though most of us never thought about it that way. We just knew she was the scholarship girl, and that was enough to mark her as other. I remember the first time I saw her. She was standing in the hallway outside the chemistry lab, looking at a campus map with an expression of fierce concentration. Her uniform was slightly too large, clearly secondhand. The blazer sleeves rolled up at the cuffs. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she carried a backpack that had seen better days, the fabric worn thin at the corners. She looked lost. Not in the geographic sense, though that too, but something deeper, like someone who had stepped into a world where none of the rules she knew applied anymore. I walked past her without stopping. I had somewhere to be, or thought I did. It didn't occur to me to help. That was the kind of person I was then. My name is Marcus Whitfield. My father was Harrison Whitfield, the Harrison Whitfield, whose name you might recognize from the financial pages or the society columns, or the wings of hospitals and museums that bear his name. We lived in a house that had more rooms than I could count, attended by staff whose faces I barely registered. I had never wanted for anything, never been told no, never had to wonder whether there would be food on the table or heat in the winter. I don't say this to boast. I say it because it's important to understand where I started, how blind I was, how completely I had mistaken my luck for merit, my privilege for worth. At Ashford, I was someone. My name carried weight. Teachers smiled when I walked in late. Coaches made exceptions. Other students laughed at my jokes, whether they were funny or not. I had grown so accustomed to this treatment that I thought it was normal. I thought everyone moved through the world this easily. Elena's presence disrupted something. I see that now. She was a reminder that the world outside our gates operated by different rules, that not everyone was given what we had been given, that our ease was not universal, not earned, not deserved. Some people might have found that humbling. I found it threatening. The bullying started small, the way these things always do. A comment here, a snicker there. Someone moved her backpack to the wrong classroom. Someone spilled coffee on her notes, apologizing with a smile that didn't reach their eyes. The kind of cruelty that can be denied, that leaves no visible marks. I wish I could tell you I wasn't part of it, but I was. Not the ringleader, perhaps, but not innocent either. I laughed when others laughed. I looked away when I should have spoken up. I made jokes at her expense, subtle ones, the kind that let me pretend I was just being clever rather than cruel. She never reacted. That was what struck me, even then. No matter what we did, Elena just kept her head down and did her work. She sat in the front row of every class. She asked questions when she didn't understand something, even when we snickered behind her. She stayed late in the library, surrounded by books, writing in notebooks she filled with neat, careful handwriting. There was a dignity to her that I couldn't touch, and somehow, that made me want to try harder. Looking back, I think I was trying to break something in her, trying to make her admit that she didn't belong, that she was less than us, that the world we had was the only world that mattered. If I could make her believe that, then I could keep believing it myself. But she wouldn't break, and that made me furious in ways I couldn't understand. The incident that changed everything happened in late October. We were in the dining hall, that grand room with its vaulted ceilings and oil paintings of former headmasters. Elena was sitting alone, as she always did, eating her lunch and reading a textbook. She had a way of making herself small, of taking up as little space as possible. And I think now that was a survival strategy, a way of trying to disappear. I was with my friends, the usual crowd, flush with the careless confidence of boys who had never faced consequences. Someone made a joke about her clothes. Someone else wondered aloud how she could afford to eat here at all. The cruelty was casual, almost reflexive. And then I did something I still can't fully explain. I walked over to her table. I picked up her tray with its half-eaten lunch, and I dumped it in the trash. Then I came back and stood in front of her, waiting for a reaction. The dining hall went quiet. Everyone was watching. This was theater now, a public performance of power. Elena looked up at me. Her eyes were dark, steady, completely calm. She didn't flinch, she didn't cry. She just looked at me as if she was seeing something I couldn't see myself. "Are you finished?" she asked quietly. I didn't know what to say. I had expected tears, anger, something I could respond to. Instead, there was just this quiet question, this refusal to give me what I wanted. "I asked if you're finished," she repeated, "because I have studying to do." She stood up, gathered her books, and walked out of the dining hall. Not running, not hurrying, just walking, with her head held high, leaving me standing there with nothing to show for my cruelty but the silence of 100 watching eyes. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt something else, something that felt uncomfortably like shame. I didn't know my father had heard about what happened. He had eyes everywhere, of course, people who reported to him, who kept him informed of things he needed to know. But I didn't think my schoolboy cruelties would rise to his attention. I was wrong. He called me into his study that evening. It was a room I associated with important things, with the hushed phone calls and serious meetings that constituted his work. The walls were lined with books he had actually read. The desk was mahogany, inherited from his grandfather. A fire burned in the grate, casting dancing shadows across the Persian rug. "Sit down, Marcus," he said. I sat. He didn't look angry, which somehow made it worse. He looked tired, disappointed. The way you look at something you thought you understood and suddenly don't recognize. "Tell me about today," he said. "About what happened in the dining hall." I tried to minimize it, tried to frame it as a joke that got out of hand, as something everyone did, as nothing serious. But he just listened, his face still and patient, until I ran out of words. "Is that all?" he asked. I nodded. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Tomorrow morning, you're going to come with me. There's something I need to show you." "But I have school." "School can wait. This can't." We left before dawn, driving through streets that were just beginning to wake. My father drove himself, which was unusual. The car was quiet except for the hum of the engine and the soft sounds of the city coming to life around us. I didn't know where we were going. He didn't tell me, and something in his manner discouraged questions. So I sat and watched the neighborhoods change outside the window. The grand houses gave way to modest ones, then to apartment buildings, then to streets I had never seen before. Streets where the buildings were older, more worn, more real. We stopped in front of a small restaurant, the kind with handwritten signs in the window and mismatched chairs visible through the glass. A sign above the door read, "Vasquez Family Kitchen," in faded letters. "Come on," my father said. We went inside. The restaurant was nearly empty at this hour, just a few early risers nursing cups of coffee. The walls were decorated with photographs and paintings, with strings of lights that probably stayed up year-round. It smelled of cooking onions and strong coffee and something else, something warm and welcoming. A woman emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She was small, with dark hair streaked with gray, and when she saw my father, her face broke into a surprised smile. "Mr. Whitfield," she said, "I didn't expect you this morning." "Maria." He took her hands in his. "I hope we're not intruding. This is my son, Marcus. I was hoping you might have some time to talk with us." Her eyes moved to me, and I saw something flicker in them. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. "Of course," she said. "Sit, please. I'll bring coffee." Over the next hour, I learned things I had never known. Maria Vasquez was Elena's mother. She had come to this country 20 years ago with nothing but a suitcase and a dream. She had worked 3 jobs to save enough to open this restaurant. She had raised 3 children on her own after her husband died, working 18-hour days, sacrificing everything so they could have what she never had. My father knew all of this because he had been coming here for years, not as a customer, though he was that too, but as an investor. He had given Maria the loan that let her open her second location. He had connected her with suppliers who gave her fair prices. He had written the recommendation that helped Elena get her scholarship. "Your daughter," he said to Maria, "is one of the most remarkable young people I've ever met. Her teachers say she's brilliant, hardworking, determined. She's going to do great things." Maria's eyes glistened. "She works so hard. Every night she is studying. She says she wants to make me proud. She already has. I sat there, listening, feeling smaller and smaller with every word. This was Elena's world, this small restaurant, with its worn tables and handwritten menus. This mother, with her calloused hands and tired eyes and fierce, unbreakable love. This family that had built everything from nothing, that had earned every single thing they had. And I had dumped her lunch in the trash because I could, because no one had ever taught me that I couldn't. Afterward, my father drove to a park near the water. We sat on a bench, watching the early morning joggers pass, watching the light change over the harbor. "I've failed you," he said finally. I looked at him, startled. "What?" "I've given you everything you could want, everything you could need. But somewhere along the way, I forgot to give you the most important thing." He turned to look at me, and his eyes were serious, searching. "I forgot to teach you that the things you have don't make you better than anyone else. They just make you luckier." I didn't know what to say. That girl, Elena, she's done more with her 18 years than most people do in a lifetime. She's faced obstacles you can't imagine and overcome them through sheer will and determination. And you who have never had to overcome anything, you thought you had the right to humiliate her. The shame was overwhelming now. I could feel it in my chest, heavy and tight. I didn't think, "No, you didn't." His voice was sad rather than angry. "And that's my fault. I should have taught you to think, to see, to understand that every person you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about." He paused. "Your grandfather taught me that. He came from nothing, Marcus. Did you know that? He grew up in a 2-room house with 6 siblings. He worked in the factories before he built his first company. He never forgot where he came from. I had heard the stories, of course, but they had always seemed like myths, distant and unreal, not connected to my life, my world, my shining present. "I want you to do something," my father said. "I want you to apologize to Elena, really apologize, not because you have to, but because you mean it. And then I want you to get to know her, to understand who she is and what she's accomplished, to see her as a person, not as a target. And if she won't forgive me, then she won't. Forgiveness isn't something you're entitled to. It's something you earn." He put his hand on my shoulder. "But you have to try, Marcus. You have to at least try to become the person I know you can be." The apology was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I found Elena in the library the next day, surrounded by her usual fortress of books. When she saw me coming, her expression didn't change, but I saw her shoulders tense, preparing for whatever new cruelty I had brought. "Can I sit down?" I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded, just slightly. I sat across from her and took a breath. I had rehearsed this, but the words I had prepared felt hollow, inadequate, so I just told the truth. "I'm sorry," I said, "for what I did in the dining hall, for everything before that, for all of it." She waited, saying nothing. "I don't have an excuse. I was cruel because I could be, because no one ever stopped me, because it made me feel powerful. But that's not a reason. It's just an explanation." I looked down at my hands. "I met your mother yesterday. My father took me to her restaurant. She told me about your family, about everything you worked for. And I realized I've never worked for anything in my life. I've never had to." Elena's expression shifted, just slightly. Something softened in her eyes. "You went to my mother's restaurant?" "My father's been going there for years. He helped her with the business loan. I didn't know any of that until yesterday." She was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then she said, "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know that I see you now, really see you, and I'm ashamed of who I've been." I looked up at her. "I can't undo what I did, but I want to do better. I want to be better, if you'll give me the chance." She studied me for a long time. I couldn't read her expression, couldn't tell what she was thinking. The silence stretched out between us, filled with everything I couldn't say. Finally, she spoke. "My mother says that people are like bread. You can't know what's inside until you break them open." A small smile crossed her face. "I think maybe you're just starting to break. Is that good? It depends on what's inside." The months that followed were a slow process of learning to see. Elena didn't forgive me right away. Forgiveness isn't like that, isn't a switch that flips or a door that opens. It's more like a garden, something that has to be tended day by day, that grows in its own time if you give it what it needs. But she gave me chances, small ones at first. We studied together in the library. We ate lunch at the same table, her friends wary of me at first, watching to see if I would revert to the person I had been. Slowly, they relaxed. Slowly, I became someone different. I started volunteering at Maria's restaurant on weekends. Not because my father told me to, though he was pleased when he found out, but because I wanted to understand Elena's world. I washed dishes, I bussed tables, I learned to make the rice and beans that were the restaurant's specialty, though mine never tasted quite right. "You're getting better," Maria told me one evening, tasting my latest attempt. "More salt next time, and more love. Food knows when you're just going through the motions." I learned to talk to the customers, to hear their stories. The construction worker who came in every Friday with his whole paycheck and ordered enough food for his family's weekly dinners. The elderly woman who sat in the corner booth every morning, nursing the same cup of coffee, just to have somewhere to go. The teenagers who pooled their money for a single plate of nachos, stretching it out for hours while they did homework together. These were people I had walked past my entire life without seeing. Now I was learning their names, their stories, the small details that made them real. Elena and I became friends. Real friends, not the careful alliance of former enemies, but something genuine. She helped me with calculus, which had always confounded me. I helped her navigate the social politics of Ashford, which came as naturally to me as breathing. She told me about her dreams, medical school, research, finding cures for diseases that stole mothers from their children and fathers from their families. She spoke about it with such clarity, such certainty, that I never doubted she would do exactly what she said. "What about you?" she asked one evening. We were sitting on the steps of the library watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I don't know," admitted. "I always assumed I'd go into my father's business, take over the company someday. It's what's expected." "Is it what you want?" I thought about it, really thought, maybe for the first time. "I want to do something that matters," I said slowly. "Something that helps people, like what my father did for your mom, but bigger. I want to create something that gives people chances they wouldn't have otherwise." Elena smiled. "That sounds like a good start." My father died the summer after I graduated from college. It was sudden, a heart attack, the doctors said. He was there one moment and gone the next. No time for goodbyes, no time for last words. Just an absence where a presence had been. At the funeral, Maria Vasquez sat in the front row, crying quietly. Elena stood beside her, holding her hand. Around them were dozens of other people my father had helped over the years. People I was only beginning to meet, stories I was only beginning to hear. He had lived a life of quiet generosity, I realized. Not the kind that gets your name on buildings, though there was that too. But the kind that happens in small moments, in loans that don't get repaid, in recommendations that open doors, in chances given to people who might never otherwise have had them. I spoke at the service. I told the story of that morning at the restaurant, of the lesson he taught me about seeing. I told them about Elena and Maria and the person I had been before that day. I told them that my father had given me many gifts, but the greatest was teaching me that what we have means nothing if we don't use it to help others. Elena found me afterward in the quiet garden behind the church. "Your father was a good man," she said. "He was. I'm only starting to understand how good." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He would be proud of you, the person you've become." I thought about the boy who had dumped her lunch in the trash, so certain of his own superiority, so blind to his own cruelty. He seemed like a stranger now, a ghost from another life. "I'm still becoming," I said. "I think that's the point. We never stop becoming." That was 15 years ago. Today, Elena is a leading researcher at one of the country's top medical centers. She's working on treatments for pediatric cancers, the kind of work that saves lives and changes families. We still talk regularly. Our children play together at Maria's restaurant, which now has 5 locations and a waiting list for Friday nights. I took over my father's foundation, transforming it into something new. We fund scholarships for students like Elena, students with brilliant minds and limited means. We provide loans to small business owners like Maria, people with dreams and determination, but no access to traditional funding. We create chances for people who might never otherwise have them. It's not enough. It's never enough. There's always more to do, more people to help, more blindness to overcome. But we keep trying. We keep showing up, because that's what my father taught me on that morning so long ago. That seeing is a choice, that every person we meet is fighting battles we know nothing about, that our luck is not our worth, and our privilege is not our merit, and that the only thing that truly matters is what we do with what we've been given. The fire is burning low now. Outside, the stars are coming out, one by one, pinpricks of light in the darkness. I've been thinking about Elena's mother, about what she said about bread, about how you can't know what's inside someone until they break. I think she was right. I think most of us walk around with our insides hidden, our real selves protected, waiting for someone to see past the surface to what lies beneath. The boy I was at 17, he was hard on the outside, shiny and perfect and completely hollow. It took being broken to find out what was really there. It took being shown a different way of seeing. I don't know who you are listening to this. I don't know what surface you show the world or what lies beneath it. But I know that somewhere inside you, there's something worth finding, something good, something that wants to grow, if only someone would give it light and water and room. Maybe tomorrow you'll see someone who's been invisible to you, someone you've walked past without noticing, or looked down on without thinking. Maybe you'll stop. Maybe you'll really see them. That's where it starts, with seeing, with choosing to look at another person and recognize their humanity, their struggles, their dignity. We all have the capacity for cruelty. I know that better than most. But we also have the capacity for change, for growth, for becoming the people we were meant to be. It just takes someone to show us how. The fire's almost out now. I should let you go. But before I do, I want to leave you with something my father said to me on that bench by the water, watching the sun come up over a world I was only beginning to understand. The measure of a person, he said, isn't what they have, it's what they give. It's who they help. It's the lives they touch along the way. I'm still trying to live up to that. Still trying to be the person he believed I could be. We all are, I think. We're all still becoming. And that's the miracle of it. Good night, friend. May you see clearly tomorrow. May you give generously. May you become everything you were meant to be. The fire's gone out, but the warmth stays with you. It always does.